I think what everybody, of course, is struggling with, at whatever stage of this musical process you are, is what we now like to call the business model. You know, how are any of us going to make any money? There was a time, if you were a young band, that you made your demo, or you got discovered, maybe you trekked up and down the M1 in a transit van for a couple of years, but somehow or another you built a following, and then somebody gave you a massive wedge of cash called an advance. And often you could never pay it back, but you could live off that for a few years and then maybe go and get another one. But that was the business model. That's kind of gone away now, not entirely, but pretty well. People are trying all sorts of other ways of selling their music. None of them seem to really work yet, do they? And what's really happened, even in the biggest kind of most professional areas of pop music, you now make your money by touring in a way that 30 years ago it was the exact opposite. You lost money touring so that you could promote your records, you know.
Yeah.
And now, you know, you put out a few records in the hopes that you might be able to persuade somebody to come watch you for 85 quid at the O2. What's your advice to people thinking, you know, how do I actually generate any cash? You know, where is the transactional nature of music?
Well, it seems one of the best ways at the moment is getting records played on the radio, it seems to be. I mean, it's not really the normal way. As you said, all the kind of models have kind of like sort of to a certain extent been thrown out. I mean, people were quite quick to kind of look forward to the demise of major record labels, but actually they were one of the great ways of supporting new artists, and it's more and more difficult to get signed out because the money's not there anymore. So, I mean, as it turns out, luckily enough, I think there are some now major indies which kind of like understand the artist, but also have a very good, you know, approach to budgets and financing and things like Excel and Beggars and Domino. I mean, they are independents, but they are pretty large.
You include proper within that. You're kind of a distributor.
Yeah, absolutely. We've distributed that, and that's a whole other area as well. Yeah, we've got Absolute Marketing. There's all sorts of these kind of marketing companies, and I was at Napster a few years ago, and I got to understand the whole digital distribution thing. So you can do an awful lot on your own anyway. So you can get the content out there, get it distributed, get it on iTunes, and get a percentage of the money out of Apple for things. But you know, it's still not going to make a huge amount of money.
Can we just, if you don't mind me interrupting, can we just drill down a bit into this? Because I think this is something people would really care about. If you're in a band, you know, you lay down your track tonight in Biker, how do you get money from that? What's the best way in which you can actually generate some
the most money I guess nowadays is going to come out of digital download, where you get a percentage of the money off a 79p track, I guess. Where I was at Napster, where we were doing kind of streaming service, with the subscription service, it then becomes 0.1 pence per track, and artists used to say to me, with managers, well, how are we going to make any money out of this? Because it's just ridiculous. And it is until you get quantity. So basically, if Spotify is supported or services like that, then they can actually have, you know, scale. And once they get scale, then they can deliver to artists a little bit more money. But gone are the days like they used to be. So I guess outside of the digital download out of iTunes, I guess you've got the traditional live music, and that's difficult when you're a new band. I think it's most difficult for new bands, without a doubt. This whole situation of where the industry is at the moment hits the new bands the hardest, because we've just had this whole thing with radio about records going straight to digital, this day and date thing, and that really hits new bands as well, because you can't put a record straight to iTunes and expect it to sell. It has to have airplay, it has to have other things going, it has to have the story and like that. Whereas if you're Beyonce or Lady Gaga, you go straight to market and it kind of sells. So, because it will. So the big thing is people being able to invest in you to give you a bit of time to grow. And that's so much more difficult to do nowadays. But yeah, the quick hits, digital downloads, and I guess the live touring, you still need to build up the story.
Dave, you don't pay bands, because that's not what you are. You're a sort of exchange, aren't you? But there are other sites out there which seem to me to be almost exploiting bands by saying, load your stuff, and then we eventually will make some money out of it, either by selling advertising or whatever, and you won't, because we'll offer you some kind of fancy kind of percentage of net or something, which will net out at zero.
Yeah. Well, I'll come on. Remind me to come on to that, because I'll probably forget. But I just wanted to kind of politely disagree with Jeff, because I think I mean, the one that, like, the main first thing is that, like, although revenues have come down and it is a lot harder to get to that point where you're making a lot of money. I think before it used to be a black and white thing. You were a band and you either got into the group of people that got to make lots of money or you didn't. So I mean, we're not like, a band hasn't, like, you know, got it worse because it's more difficult to make money. And actually I'd say for a new band it's almost better because you've got such a direct connection with your audience. You've got so many different outlets of things that you can do. I was speaking at the Great Escape a couple of weeks ago, and the guy from a company called Topspin, Ian Rogers, he had a really great presentation. One of the things that he said that really stuck with me was like trying to get out of thinking about your music as being a transactional business. Like, actually don't let it worry you that it's gone from, you know, £4.50 trade price for a CD down to, you know, point whatever pence. Because there's so many things you can do above and beyond that, and also things that aren't then only for the people who get signed to the record. You know, because you had to be signed to a record label to even get into those like areas before. So, you know, think about, you know, how can you make a transaction with someone that's like £40 or £50 or £10, and all those things are, you know, and now you can build up that audience. You know, don't even think about selling anything until you've got, you know, 1,000 people who absolutely love your music and 100 people who are going to, you know, come to the front of every gig you do. But think about other things that you can do, just like making badges. You don't even have to have a record. You just need to have people excited about your band and your brand, and then, you know, say, what do you want to buy? There's a group that I watch. They're only on YouTube. They do these kind of video singles. And they don't even think about CDs. They just, oh, okay, like every now and then at the end of one of their videos they say, we've done this really cool new t-shirt that one of our fans designed for us, and we've printed it and we've got 500. Or, you know, like make things that you can then pre-sell. And it's almost like being a band has gone back to being a bit of a cottage industry. And to be honest,
Marx was right, wasn't
yeah, but I mean, to be honest, it is
just failed.
Yeah.
People were doing all this work, and you're saying, actually, you can't expect people to pay you to be a musician. They'll only pay you if you make them a fucking badge.
Yeah, but that is capitalism. You're finding a market. You can directly go to your market and say, what are you prepared to pay for, and you can actually do things over and above it. Like I was sat down at lunch with a band the other day, and this guy gave me the CD, and I was like, okay, well, I'll have a listen. And the first thing I noticed was that the artwork of the CD was absolutely beautiful. And I was like, do you know what? I'd really love to have that or that type of artwork on my wall. I mean, it turns out that his wife, like his fiance, does artwork all the time. So it's like, oh my God, you should, you know, okay, great about this CD, but why don't you get your like wife to start making more, you know, hand prints, or just doing things that are really special that people are willing to pay for. And live is part of that. I mean, obviously.
I just pick up from Jeff and Dave's points, which I agree with totally. I mean, it is just about doing things differently and doing things cleverly, and it is about that connection with people, I think. Music is obviously the most important thing of all of it, the live experience, the listening to it. But you know, there's bands out there who I still remember and love because I like their logo, or because I've seen them on an advert, or I know I saw them play a free gig which was sponsored by Levi's. You know, there's all these little things that you can do, I think, to get your music out there. So I don't think anybody gets into music to make money in the first place, obviously, but if you want to put the time and dedication into it, then you need that kind of the security that the money gives you. But
I'm just going to say to you,
also,
there are all these businesses,
just
like, you know, Spotify is a good example, and iTunes is an example, and Amazon is an example. There are these businesses, they're making some money, you know, either by selling advertisements or by selling on the music, or they're doing, they seem to have found a revenue model, but nobody is prepared to say, do you know what, we have an obligation to pay for the hard work that's been done by these musicians. And, you know, if actors should be paid and if writers should be paid, well, musicians should be paid, shouldn't they?
it should be. It's tough. I mean, there's big bands who get played on Radio 1 on the playlist who've got jobs when they're not touring, and they tour really, really hard. They work in pubs and clubs and
Driving cabs.
Yeah, whatever they do that to get money, and they get some money then from getting airplay. I think Jeff's right, you know, a good way of getting money is airplay, and thankfully, you know, BBC and commercial radio pays to play artists. And like Los Campesinos will just put out a fanzine. I paid £25 to get 4 of them for the next year. You know, I'll buy their album because I like them as well, but it's those little extra incentives and those little things that make a musician kind of stay around for longer.